I am David Swansbuckle.
And I'm Warren Spector.
We are the Metropolitan elites coming from you live from our ivory towers. And yesterday, the left-wing Illuminati rang us up and said the following.
The BBC.
The BBC. The BBC. The
Old
evil,
auntie, whatever it is.
biased, lefty, liberal, wishy-washy, ivory towers, elite, all those words. Yeah. So yeah, the BBC stuff is happening. It's all about the chart of renewal, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's things are. So obviously, David Cameron has enlisted the Voldemort of the arts, whose name is John Whittingdale.
I know, openly quite critical of the BBC in the past.
Oh no, he said, I'm not setting out with any preconceived ideas. That's what he said. After saying the licence fee is worse than the poll tax. Oh, and he's Rupert Murdoch's mate as well, yeah. Just happens to be. Just a coincidence. Coincidence, yeah. And obviously being part of the current cabinet, what he's saying publicly, allegedly, isn't what he's saying privately. So he's insisting, oh no, it's not about strictly or anything particular, it's not, I'm completely open to ideas. Probably he's saying, let's kill Strictly Come Dancing. Press the kill button. I think that, it's obviously ideological. It's exactly the same stuff he's saying since the 80s. And, you know, in the 80s the BBC was the best TV in the world, wasn't it? You know, so it doesn't matter that the argument's different now. They're still saying the same thing. It's still just Murdoch's mates trying to get in, and you know, and it's so obvious, given, you know, this guy he's an authoritarian free marketeer, so he is an all-rounded Tory, if you like, and that he's the sensible economic conservative type and the social conservative evil type mixed into a glorious, you know, which is the worst possible person you could have, you know, and he really hates the Hacked Off organisation, because obviously you don't question the media. We like freedom in this country, so we like to bash people over the head and tell them to shut up and protect Rupert Murdoch.
What I don't understand is why the Tories are so openly hostile to the BBC. The standard argument is that the BBC is anti-conservative, has a lot of anti-conservative coverage.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is purely at odds with my experience of the BBC, actually. I mean, I watch quite a lot of and listen to quite a lot of the political output from the BBC, and it seems to be dominated pretty much by right-wingers.
Yeah.
Robert Peston got into a lot of trouble for suggesting that the BBC News basically takes its cues from the right-wing media. Basically, they read the Daily Mail in the morning, Telegraph, see what they're going with, and say, yeah, that's the news. Yeah. That does seem to happen. For some reason, the Conservatives seem to think that they're always having a go at them, when realistically
it's not happening.
It's not happening at all.
Yeah. Well, what's the best political programme on TV? What do you think the best one is? Because we might not agree here, I think.
See, I watch the Daily Politics most days, yeah, and it might just be saturation, but I would say that. But I absolutely hate Andrew Neil.
Oh really?
Yeah,
I quite like him. I think he's quite funny.
Andrew Neil's style of interviewing is simply to take whatever the opposition is saying and just echo that. And the effect of that is, if, say, Labour came up with a completely crazy argument against a government policy, he will just echo that, and that gives it an air of legitimacy.
Yeah.
Sort of say we should consider that. That's not generally what happens. What generally happens is the Tories come out with some crazy argument, and Andrew Neil just reiterates that and gives it some legitimacy.
Yeah, talks it very loudly over the person he's interviewing.
Yeah, he's also very, very confrontational. He doesn't really let things come out in a considered manner. It's always sort of, you know, how uncomfortable can I make this person opposite me feeling? Except for Ian Duncan Smith.
Yeah,
he did a big interview with Ian Duncan Smith last year, and it was the softest interview I have ever seen. For a guy who, you know, has been a very controversial figure. There's some very heavy criticisms put on Ian Duncan Smith's doorstep involving some very sick people, which you would think for journalistic purposes Andrew Neil would be quite interested to put to bed, but instead he decided to play quite lightly that case, in that instance. Yeah. Very rarely have I seen an Andrew Neil interview and thought, oh, that was a good interview. But he is the prime producer of the BBC political output at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's very right
on every day, and he is very right wing.
I mean, I like This Week, and I don't know if I'm maybe in a minority in that. I mean, there isn't anything on other channels at all, really, when you think about it. I mean, what does Sky News produce that's a sort of political debate? Nothing, which says a lot. So what's the alternative? There isn't any. But I think This Week, daily politics is a bit drier. This Week, I think, is the best way of presenting politics. Now you could argue, well, there should be sensible, dry discussions about what's going on rather than bullying people and all the stuff he does. But it makes good TV. That's all there is. There isn't anything else. Question Time's a joke now. It's a pantomime.
Question Times. I mean, I still like to watch it, and I get incredibly disappointed when it stops because Parliament's in recess, as it is now. Bizarre, utterly bizarre. The world stops because Parliament has decided to have 6 weeks off. I quite like This Week. I mean, I like Michael Portillo. I think he's
good,
he's normally quite considered, and he gives a sensible answer. And it's a shame that they don't have a regular opposite for him from the other side. So they kind of put between Diane Abbott and
what's his
and
name?
a few others.
Yes,
Alan Johnson.
Alan Johnson, yeah. I mean, they're okay, but I think Michael Portillo is really good. He's really good at analysing it, putting across his opinion, and being able to sort of separate the two. Yeah. Which is brilliant. Maybe you should present it.
But yeah, this BBC thing. It sounds like, well, let's put it this way: the government. It's well known that the government tends to do all the unpopular stuff early because people forget it by the time of the next general election, especially in a 5-year cycle. The BBC is incredibly popular. Most people like the licence fee. Well, not most people. 48% of people support the licence fee. Think it's the best way to fund the BBC. And then there's a couple of other subscription and there's a couple of other ways, which is in a vast minority. It's sort of like 25% and 15%. And John Whittingdale said, there you go, over half the people don't think the licence fee is the best way of funding the BBC.
There, the statistics prove it.
Yeah, the statistics prove it.
Yeah, but I mean, it has to be said. How much is it? 150? I don't know how much I'm paying. I am paying it. Don't come and get me. They can't. They can still come and get you. Can't they? Didn't they reject it in the end?
I think they rejected it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I do pay it. It's fine. No, it's fine. It is hard to justify that. You have to pay 150 quid. The problem is the justification is a long answer. That's the problem, isn't it? And well, I don't want to pay that. I want to pay for Sky. I want to pay for rubbish TV. You know, and lots of people do, and that's obviously not the point. It's about supporting the arts. I mean, the argument for being a training ground and all that stuff, etc., etc. All that TV that would never have been made. BBC 4 would not exist, and you could argue, BBC 3 could have been good, and isn't, but they are getting rid of it. It's not like commercial TV never makes anything good. Obviously, there's some fantastic American TV, and only 20 years ago that just wasn't there, which is really strange, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Why that is, and who knows? But the BBC have struggled to compete with that. There was an unattributed quote. I wish I knew who this was because it was brilliant. The last time the government messed with the arts, we got the dough. Keep out, right? Whittingdale. Keep away. It's interesting how it's being spun so cleverly, even in The Guardian. Just like the budget and everything else, even in The Guardian, even in the evil lefty papers, it's being spun as much softer when you only have to examine it a bit to realise that this guy wants to dismantle it. He really, that's his ideology, that's what he's always believed. And of course, because his son likes Radio 1, oh well, we'll keep Radio 1 then. That's exactly not the point. It's the whole point is it's got to support everybody, and it's got to support, if there's only 1% of the audience are going to watch something, but it's important, it should be on TV. BBC Parliament. I'm sure there's Tories.
Who watches that?
Exactly. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of Tories who don't would like to get rid of BBC Parliament, and so you wouldn't see all those green seats empty. But that's why we should see it, for exactly that reason. When Nigel Farage tried it, of course, being a less professional spin doctor, he mentioned Doctor Who, which was an error. Because obviously the first thing that came into all the newspapers, Nigel Farage wants to ban Doctor Who. So suddenly everybody hates him. Oh no, forget that. And it's interesting, they're not mentioning Doctor Who at all, because Doctor Who has an emotive effect on people, because when it was cancelled in the 80s, there was actually a very good reason for it being cancelled in the 80s, but I'm not going to attempt that here. But I think when you mention Doctor Who, people realise what the BBC is. If you mention The Voice, well, that's just them copying ITV, isn't it? So what's the point in that? Why do we have to pay for that? And so that's why they're not mentioning it very often.
Strictly Come Dancing was another one that was a level that they weren't suggesting, because that is unbelievably popular.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it kind of baffles me a little bit.
Well, exactly. That's the point, isn't it? Well, I don't want to watch it,
No.
but you know, and Sherlock is very, very well written, and it couldn't be made like that by a commercial broadcaster. Now, it would be made by a commercial broadcaster. It would be very good. Sky could make it. I'm sure it'd be very good. It wouldn't be that good. There's no way it could have had that political slant on it. It's had a lot of commentary in there. They wouldn't be able to do it so slowly. They wouldn't be able to play with the audience and all that stuff. It just wouldn't have been allowed. The advertisers wouldn't allow it. You know, that's why you need the BBC.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So are they right wing then? Are they right wing, the BBC?
I think on their political and news coverage, they're quite right wing. On their drama and everything else,
yeah,
they're quite liberal.
Yeah. That's the point, isn't it? That's the. And yet they get accused of both, of bias from both sides. Fierce, hateful, angry people accusing them of being right wing and of being left.
I do think there is an issue that's not just restricted to the BBC, which is a problem for society as a whole, but in the budget coverage, we had the Daily Politics budget coverage, which Andrew Neil wasn't involved with. But you know, the information come out, and then you had I think it was a deputy political editor. He turned around and he said, I'm not quite sure I understand tax credits anyway. What are tax credits? How do they work? There is a problem with the BBC being filled by very middle class, very sheltered individuals who have a similar stance to the government, really, that they know the way life is, and they are representative of the way life is, when in actual fact they are representative of a big minority.
Yeah, and these are people at the very top we're talking about, aren't we? And they're often very right wing, actually. Sometimes they're left wing. But you're right, yeah. Just like the government, in that they have a belief that no, my life, how I've lived my life, that's what it is. What these people are talking over here, they're lying.
Yeah. There is a disconnect. This is why the budget is so toxic, really, and why people are feeling pretty despondent, because there is a real lack of empathy with people who are going to be put into dire straits by this, because things have come so easy to so many people in positions of authority. They cannot understand what it is to not have the natural advantages. They don't see the advantages that they've had.
They think that the amount of effort they've made is proportional to their success. That's the problem, and it isn't.
That's exactly right. They believe they are where they are on merit, and all people are going to do is put in a little bit of extra effort, and they'll have what they have. But in actual fact, we all know that education and background is so important in this country. Who you know, who you grow up with, it shapes your attitude, it shapes the sort of social connections you have, and it shapes the kind of jobs that you can go for when you grow up. We need less of that at the BBC. I think we both have big criticisms of the BBC in certain areas, but you know, it's a big institution, and there are going to be problems, and all you can do is sort of see what those problems are, work on it, and push forward, not try and dismantle it, so that
using it as an excuse to dismantle it. Really,
so that people like Rupert Murdoch have got more market to move into, or something like that, or that they don't infringe on Rupert Murdoch's market or ITV's market. So
yes, we're going to be talking more about this, aren't we? In a more specific sense about the bias. So we thought we'd do a weekly thing on the bias of the BBC. How biased are they? They're very biased. We'll find out. Join us. So, we'll be back next week when our left-wing lizard overlords ring us up. See you then.
Hopefully something happens during the week.
Yeah, that'd be good.